Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, Fee.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew. We talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on magma.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. If you haven't yet, check out our Patreon and subscribe to our channel.
Today we have with us Miranda Harmon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
It's so exciting to have you on. You dabble in a lot of different aspects of animation and also comics, right?
Yeah. So I've worked on the design side of animation and the story side, and I also do graphic novels and indie comics and zines and things like that.
So which came first?
Comics. So I come from comics. I started drawing comics probably I guess when I was in college. I didn't go to an art school. I went to a liberal arts college, but I ended up doing art anyway. I like couldn't stop. I I loved comics a lot, and it was near the Small Press Expo, which is like a really big indie comics expo in Maryland, and I just went, and it was like a really exciting time for indie comics. It was also a time when it seemed like you could go to a convention and get noticed and get a job at Cartoon Network
Hmm.
if you were an indie cartoonist. And I really wanted to work in animation, but I never went to school for it because when it came time for me to apply to colleges, I just thought I wasn't really good enough. I didn't want it enough. Like I tried a pre-college program, and it convinced me not to go to art school.
It's funny that you bring up that idea that, like, at the time you could get a job at Cartoon Network by tabling, because I remember
hmm
that era. That was like when, like
Yeah.
2015, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was like, the Adventure Time boom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was something interesting that I had kind of learned for the first time going over to Cartoon Network is that all of the people that were working in the offices next to me weren't storyboard artists originally. They were all comics people, and I was like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, I've never worked in storyboarding before. I got
Yeah.
scouted because I had a strip. And I was like, what is going on? Did I pick the wrong entry point? Like, how did you guys get noticed?
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
funny.
yeah. When I was a kid, I really wanted to go to Cal Arts because that's where like I was really into like Disney, and I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and it was a time when they were still making movies there, like Disney movies. And I was like obsessed with Lilo and Stitch and Chris
Mhm.
Sanders, and all those guys went to Cal Arts. So I was like, oh, I really want to go. But it just didn't happen. I like took a figure drawing class, and she was like, oh, you're not cut out for Cal Arts. And I was like, okay, that's it. You know,
Whoa.
it's like it just really seemed like that was it, but
That's
it wasn't it, you know?
Wait, so back to tabling and doing comics.
Yeah.
Did it work? What was your experience doing that? Was that your entry point, or is that what you tried to do?
Yeah, I so I read web comics online a lot.
what are
And
some
I
of your favorites?
Oh my God. Okay, so Octopus Pie was a
Mm-hmm.
really big one that like just blew my mind. Gun Show, anything that Casey Green did, I was a really big fan of. My first webcomic I ever read was called VG Cats. It was like a video game gamers on the couch webcomic, but they were cats.
Oh, that's cute.
And I was like 14, and I was like, oh, I gotta draw cats like that.
You got to draw cats. That's how you do
Yeah.
it. That's how you get
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
So you get good.
I mean, we're both
But
drawing cats. That's like we're currently.
yeah,
So, I mean, you were onto something.
yeah. But yeah, so I it didn't really occur to me that I could make webcomics too. Like I was just like, oh, there's all these comics online to read. And in college, I had like a Tumblr, and I started to connect with other cartoonists. And that was really kind of the barrier I needed to break, was to
Hmm.
make friends in comics, because then that was a big motivation to be making work and posting it and getting feedback and kind of joining a community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's
Uh,
huge.
yeah, so that was the big thing. And yeah, like my school, it wasn't an art school, but I was studying art and art history, and my professors were really great. I was taking like a sculpture thesis course, and my professor, she said, "Well, comics is kind of like sculpture because it's a three-dimensional art form because time is a dimension." And so she let me
Interesting.
like do comics and animation, and
What?
like
So
I
you
like
just
taught
skipped
myself
a
how to
dimension?
animate.
You just skipped a
Yeah.
dimension, and you're like, I'm
You can
doing
just do that.
three-dimensional art. That I didn't know you could
Yeah.
do that.
I know. I was pretty amazed. Um,
That's so cool. So what your major was art history?
it was fine arts and my minor was art history. So
Okay.
at first I thought I was going to go into academia
Okay, okay,
or
Hmm.
okay.
be a teacher.
I heard that's also kind of like I don't know if you ever kind of looked into that before really going into the animation career, but like I heard academia can be pretty tough. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of a grind.
Oh yeah, it seems really hard, especially now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, with all the like all the politics. So when did you get your first gig? What was your what would you consider to be like your first paying gig?
My first paying gig, I was a flatter for Raina Telgemeyer's Baby Club sitter books right after college. So what
Oh.
happened after college, I went back to Florida to a place called Gainesville, because there was a comic book school there. There is called the Sequential Artist Workshop. And so it's an unaccredited, just 1 year long program that was started by Tom Hart, who was a professor at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. And he started SAW because he didn't want anyone to go into debt to study
Oh,
comics.
nice.
And so it's like they do everything they can to make it affordable, and it's just like a very cool school down in Florida. So I did that, and
How
then
much is the tuition, if I can ask? At the
that's a good
time?
question. I believe it was something like $2,000,
Oh,
maybe
that's
3,000.
great.
Yeah, it like I could be wrong, but I it was in that ballpark for sure. It wasn't $50,000, you know.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah. So I did that, and then yeah, it was a flatter. So that what a flatter is, it's like sometimes it's called a coloring assistant job. It's what happens when the colorist gets pages, like comic book pages, and then the flatter will go in and lay down the colors, and that way the colorist, like a step is taken away, and it's a lot easier
Hmm.
because it's kind of like the tedious part of coloring. And so I did
Mhm.
that for a while, and I was working a day job too. I was like working in a restaurant. Um, and then yeah, it just kind of went from there. I didn't start working on like actually comics. Like Mayor Good Boy wasn't until 2019, 2020 era. So it was some time before I actually like made real money from comics.
When you say real money, can you kind of give us an idea like were you able to live from it? Was it like an
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, sort of. So for the Mayor Good Boy books, I got an advance,
Mhm.
and kind of a crazy thing happened where sorry to backtrack a little bit,
No, you're
but
good.
so what happened was I came out to LA in 2017 just because I really wanted to be here. I had a lot of friends here, and I knew this is where animation happened. I didn't have a job or an apartment lined up. I couldn't do this now. Like thinking back, really stresses me out, but it all worked out. And I
Same.
found an apartment. And yeah. And so I worked in I was a delivery driver for a small print shop in Glendale.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I did that for a couple years. And then like 1 week in December 2018, I got the email from Cartoon Network, and I got the first book deal for Mayor Good Boy and a second book deal all in the same week.
Whoa. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
it
That
was
yeah, that's
Whoa.
very
stressful.
scary.
Yeah.
And it was like the happiest day of my life. And it was also, I was just like, okay,
What
oh
what was
God.
what was the process like? Because I feel like in the story we just all of a sudden got book deals.
Yeah.
What was the process like of getting those or applying, or were you doing
Yeah.
meetings, pitching? Like what was that like?
So what happened was for Mayor Good Boy specifically, I knew one of the editors. I think I had done a cover for Lumberjanes. ages ago for Boom Studios, and then that editor knew my name. And it might have been that we met at a convention or something, but she asked me earlier that year if I had any pitches for young adult graphic novels for YA stuff,
Mhm.
because Random House at the time was starting up Random House Graphic, which is like a their imprint for middle grade and young adult books. And so she asked me, and I said, I'll let me think about it, And then my friend Dave Scheid, who I've also worked with before, he's a writer and I'm an illustrator, and we worked on one of his comics a while ago. And he came to me with the idea for Mayor Good Boy. And so then we had our idea, and so we put the pitch together. We made like a sample comic. Usually that's like 3 to 4 pages for something like that, and made a pitch deck and just sort of like described the characters and the tone, and they wanted it.
So,
And so
what's it
yeah.
like to do a comic with? I'm assuming it was a creative partner, like a co-creator.
Yeah. Mhm.
What's that process like versus working alone? Do you prefer one or the other?
I think I prefer working alone. Well, it's hard to say. I like working with other people, and I liked working with Dave a lot. I think for a comic that is as big as Mayor Good Boy, like in terms of size, like 200
Yeah.
pages, I think the next time I do that, I would like to write it because it's
Hmm.
such a big commitment, and I just kind of want to try putting my whole
Hmm.
art
Yes.
into
Hmm.
something
Yeah, it
like
makes
that,
sense.
It's because it's like a huge, it was like years. And I love Mayor Good Boy, no regrets, of course, but I think next time I do something that size, I would like to do it by
That
myself.
makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
really great that you bring up the amount that you said years, because so we had Brie Paulson just recently on the podcast, and she's able to do comics full time. She said she takes something like a year to a year and a half, which is really fast for graphic
Yeah.
novel that's 200 pages. What about you? What would you say is the, because you had a job at the same time, so how did you kind of manage
Yeah.
that schedule and doing the book with while working in animation as well?
It was really hard to do both at once because I didn't know. It was my first time drawing a 200-page book, and I felt like I knew what that would be like, but I really didn't. And because I had drawn comics for years at that point, like I had been drawing journal comics and posting them online, I had been going to conventions and making lots of mini comics and making short stories and things like that. I thought I knew what it would be like, but it was so hard. It's a lot of work. And so that, and then it was also my first time working in animation. And
Mm-hmm.
luckily, the job I had in animation was on the Fungies, which was lovely and enjoyable. And nobody seemed to care that I had my iPad and was drawing on company time. Like when I didn't have any work to do and I was drawing my book at the same time. Nobody either noticed or cared.
By
And
the way,
everybody, yeah.
for people listening, check out Stephen Neary's episode number 146, who was the
Oh
showrunner of the
yeah.
Fungies. It's a really fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steven's great. He was such a good boss.
Yeah, he seems like, yeah, he seems like just so chill on the podcast
Yeah.
too. It's funny. Yeah, Cartoon Network, it's funny that you described this atmosphere because I also got that vibe when I worked there. It was very like, I don't know, relaxed. For better or for worse, I guess, because sometimes
Yeah.
I was just kind of like people doing nothing during the day and then crunching like crazy at night.
Yeah, it seemed like that too. Like I noticed like people like wouldn't come in and then they would get it done though, like they would probably be working super late at night or at home.
Hmm.
And it seemed like a kind of a weirdly chill environment for my first job. Like I was free to ask questions, and any mistakes I made, people answer. It was totally okay. It was really, really great to have that as my entry point into animation. And I was one of the storyboard trainees for that year.
Oh, very
So
cool.
Cartoon Network used to do this thing called Storyboard Trainee Program. I think they did it for 2 years, and it was really special. And we showed up there, and they like just taught us how to storyboard for months, and we like got to listen to all different showrunners talk and voice actors and kind of learn just the ins and outs of how the studio worked.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
It was very, very special.
Yeah.
Um,
What? So over the course of that program, I'm not sure if they still do it or not, but over the course of that program, is there like, hey, you just come in on a certain day each week, and you can like sit in on like pitch sessions, like is it special dedicated time with some of the directors? Do you have like assignments, or are you like actually helping on any of the shows at all? Like what do you end up doing?
Well, for that one, it was a full-time job. It was like we would come in 5 days a week
Mm-hmm.
from 9 to 5.
Oh,
And our mentor, we had a mentor who was assigned to us. His name was Randy Myers. And he had been there for a really long time. Like he worked on the original Powerpuff Girls and everything, and he showed us like storyboards from Samurai Jack and everything, and just would tell us all his stories, and that was really cool. And yeah, and so a lot of the time we were learning how to use Storyboard Pro,
hmm,
and he was giving us lectures on film language and effective storytelling and storyboard techniques and
that's
things and like
awesome.
the rule of thirds. Yeah, it was really cool. Just things that before that I had taken like I feel like I don't remember exactly how many, but it seemed like it was around 15 tests for shows like storyboarding, and I didn't get any, and a lot of that was because I didn't know what I was doing, and there was like I there's so many gaps between animation and comics that I
yeah.
needed to be filled in, and it was the perfect bridge. And sometimes we would go and see what they were doing on this show or that show, and like JG Quintel would come and speak to us, and um it was really cool.
That's dope. I think that when most people would hear that you're in a program like that, they might assume that it's kind of like an internship or something, but it really does
Yeah.
seem like it's like a teaching opportunity where they're taking people that they can tell have potential and educating them and skilling them up. That's really
Mhm.
dope.
Yeah.
Were you paid during the training?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
And I was paid more than I'd ever made before. Not, it wasn't that much, but I was a delivery driver, and then I was like, "Oh my God. Whoa,
Yeah.
you can make actual money."
Oh, I was gonna ask, when you were working at the print shop, did you
Yeah.
get discount prints? Were you making comics like zines and getting discount prints and
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, that was nice. They like at first they weren't gonna give me any discounts, but they were like, "Okay, you can have this one for free." They were very nice about that. They knew that I was a cartoonist, and that was a real nice to have that, because when I was at SAW in Florida, I had access to a resew machine 24/7, which
Oh,
was
right.
a real
Yeah.
miracle. And it was like an old one, and it was breaking down all the time, but I still had access
Yeah.
to it. And before that, I was in college and I had access to a printer, so it was like, oh man, I just need a printer. So I had one at work, and that was nice.
Dude, that's
That's
so
dope.
funny because like I remember this so vividly when I was in college, somehow we still had to print our portfolios. I think I was probably in the last couple of years where we still had to print portfolios. And it was this whole kind of like scavengers hunt to find
Mm.
which area of the school you could go to the printer and what time you could go, a lot of time we'd go to the photography kind of like area, and they would like hate us because they were like, because like we would just kind of use all of their paper for like
Yeah.
our portfolio. The good old times of having like a free printer. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Gosh. And now like everyone likes Riso, which is really cool. I'm glad that it's so popular, but I have to like book time at a studio, and that costs
Mhm.
money, and then I have to pay for all the paper and the ink and everything, and it's just like something that I totally took for granted, was having
Yeah.
access to a printer.
You know what's funny about the popularity of Riso is that now people, and I don't know if you've ever had that, Miranda, like when tabling or whatever, but like the I color my pictures usually with very vivid, bright colors, and but it's all digital, right? And then I get
Yeah.
it printed inkjet. And but because of my color choices, sometimes people are like, "Oh, is this Riso?" And
Yeah.
Huh.
so they've associated the color palette with
Yeah.
the technique, which I
Like
was,
anything that's pink or orange is
yes,
Riso. That's so
exact.
funny.
I was so surprised. I was like, well, maybe I don't have to print Riso anymore. I can just.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you get it printed regular and just do Rizzo colors, I mean, that's how you
Mhm.
counterfeit. That's how you counterfeit Rizzo and mark
That's
your
For
pieces up.
sure.
I don't know. That's so funny. I mean, I was wondering if you had experienced anything like this. When you print right now, are you still printing Riso, or do you ever do inkjet?
Usually inkjet, honestly. Like so Riso, I usually reserve that for doing prints or covers
Hmm.
of zines.
Oh, right.
Usually
Yeah.
because printing the whole book is just like it's just so much time and it's kind of expensive. But people do that. I mean, people find a way, like life finds a way. There's people doing these amazing stuff with Riso, but I'm just like I'll just print it at the copy place where I used to work, and they don't give me discounts anymore, but it's kind of nice to just to go there.
Oh, nice. You like catch up with them,
Hmm.
see what they're up to.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Yeah, I invested in a printer recently. I got the Echo Tank.
Uh-huh.
And now I print a lot of magazines at home.
Oh, that's great. I was talking to my fiance about how maybe we should just get a printer.
Yeah, how much do you print, would you say, on, like, let's say on in a year. Let's say in a year you have okay, this is going to be the question. The
Yeah,
question is
yeah.
going to be, let's look
Just
at
wait
one of
until
your
you hear this
typical year.
question.
Just wait, it's a great one. Uh, uh, let's think about one of your typical years. How many conventions or tabling events on average would you say that you have, and therefore how much do you print for these events on a typical year?
Good question. I think in recent years it's been about 2 to 3 events.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll do like a pop-up or something that's like last minute and kind of small. Um, Yeah, usually about 3. And what I try to print, if I try to make a zine every time I go to a big event, like the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland. I really like doing that one, but it's across the country. But Cala, I love Cala in here in LA. The Comic Arts Los Angeles show is so good. And so I'll try to make something new when I'm tabling at one of those events, and I'll try to print like 70 to 80 copies of each zine.
Hmm.
And I've only sold out of one zine recently, but I think I can see my stock is kind of dwindling, but it lasts for years, and I just kind of am like, oh, it's an investment. You can't they don't expire, so just
Yeah.
make as many as you can because you don't want to go back.
I'm glad that you're kind of talking about the number, because that's like every time I try to rope in one of my friends into making comics, that's like I feel like I'm like, what's the word? Like I'm like a madam, but for comics. I'm like, you gotta join, you gotta
No,
like do this.
I feel like there's going to be some people out there when they're parents and they catch their kid making zines and they're like, "Do you understand what this is? This is the gateway to making comics." Yeah, and they're like, and they light it on fire, they burn it, and they're like, they treat it like marijuana. Like they're like, "No kid of mine is going to become a comic artist." I caught him making zines. I couldn't believe it was true, but I caught one of those long staplers in his drawer.
Oh man, or like a bone folder.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Those like just like the name, the word bone folder feels dangerous.
Yeah, no kid of mine.
It's so real though. I like, it's so funny. This could be such a great bit, because it's like, it's like you don't make money doing these, you don't make money doing comics. It's just
You're
like
wasting
a
your
waste
life.
of your money
You're
and
wasting your
time.
life, and you're gonna be
Yeah.
hanging out with artists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like comics, I feel like sometimes I do have a kind of a rough it changes. I've been through periods in recent years of just like complete burnout
Mhm.
after I finished the Mayor Good Boy books, and I was working on I think Tuca and Bertie, and then suddenly I had neither of those things to do, and I was just like, whoa, and I couldn't draw for years, it seemed like. But at the same time though, like brought me like all of my friends and my fiance. I met at a comic book convention and stuff. And I think that's why I'm in animation is through comics. Like it does happen, but it's like such a roundabout way, and there's really no. I feel like I feel bad when people ask me like how I got in, just because there's not really like a
Like a
single way
pipeline.
to
Yeah.
to go, you know.
Yeah. That's so true. I think something though that was really interesting in what you said because I was gonna say whenever I try to like rope in my friends into making zines, so one of the first questions, like one of the first things that they ask me is like how many should they print? And it's such a hard question to answer because it's like you don't want to invest too much money, like
Because half the time you're giving them out. Like sometimes you sell them,
yeah.
but the good
Yeah.
thing about zines is like you can kind of hand them out to people, and it acts as like it's like a business card almost, but like fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, trade like when you trade a zine, that's the best thing
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah,
It's
I know
Yeah.
it's
there's people that sell
yeah.
zines before everyone writes angry emails to me. Listen, I don't let my son make zines, and I'm against him. No, I'm just kidding. No.
Against them. That's so funny. But I was also gonna say, so you usually kind of aim for 70 to
Mhm.
80 copies of a zine.
Mhm.
How do you price your zines?
That's also like I change the price like the day of the show. I always I like
Interesting.
decide, and then I make another sign out of paper. I'm like,
Oh
oh, this is gonna
no.
be $6 instead of $7,
Well,
and I change.
is that from
But
seeing other
usually,
people's prices at the show, and you're like, I'm undervaluing myself. I knew it.
yeah, that. And also sometimes if they're not selling, I'm like, oh, I just want to get rid of these, you know? Like I'll make it $5. But yeah, usually like $5 to $10 per zine.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And I sell hardcover books too, and those sometimes sell, sometimes don't. And it's but the great thing about zines is that they're really light, so you can take as many as you want in just a plastic bag, and you don't have to like ship them
Yeah.
anywhere.
That's true. I was gonna ask you because you go to SPX that's on the East Coast. Like I've
Hmm.
only once done a show out of state. I went to Emerald City Comic Con
Oh,
in
cool.
Seattle, which was super cool. Had a lot of fun. However, I will say I did not figure out how to most efficiently travel because I feel like because okay, so when you're gonna go to SPX, how do you kind of like stay within your costs? You know,
Yeah.
with the flight, with bringing all the zines. What's your how'd you go about it?
It's all kind of a guess as to how much will sell, especially after 2020. It seems like people are just in general buying less stuff at shows,
Mm.
you know, so I have been in situations where I shipped myself a couple boxes of books, and then I had one box left over and I had to find a way to get rid of all these books or
Mhm.
fly home with them, you know. But yeah, usually for something like SPX, I'm just gonna guess like, okay, I'll bring 10 copies of my books, you know,
Mhm.
and as many copies of my zines as I can fit, because if I don't sell those, then it's fun to trade those or give them away to people. Um, and yeah, it really is just kind of a matter of doing it a bunch and guessing and getting lucky.
Yes.
Because it is expensive,
Mhm.
and something like SPX, you want to stay in the hotel, you know, you gotta do the whole
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I was gonna say. Is like, because then you not only do you have to like pay for the table, but also the flight and the hotel
Yeah.
and all these things. That's interesting. When you say you ship the books to yourself, do you ship them to the hotel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, just a little tip for people listening who want to do a show out of this is for me. This is just for
Yeah,
me.
have you thought about making some sort of zine suit to wear under your clothes and to smuggle the zines across on the plane?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, they're just everywhere in my luggage, just like pouring out.
It's funny also that you bring up like the hardcovers with in comparison to the like the zines. I haven't had yet a hardcover book on my table, but I've always wondered how these sell at shows because they're usually pricier and I think
Yeah.
I don't know, have you ever noticed in the way people buy books if they favor, like my experience recently has been that people will always favor the cheapest item on my table. So they'll buy the $1 badge or the $2 mini comic. And sometimes if I'm lucky, they'll buy a $5 postcard.
Yeah, people buy stickers a lot. I've
Mhm.
noticed like that's a big thing. Yeah, it's hard to say. So, because my books that are hardcover are all for kids too, so it depends on kind of the vibe of the show. Like
Mm.
a couple weeks ago, I was in Alaska. There's a gallery in Juneau called Alaska Robotics Gallery that puts on a comics camp every year. So a bunch of cartoonists go to Juneau, Alaska, and they do a little one-day convention at the museum there. And the city of Juneau is only 30,000 people,
Mhm.
but 1 in 27 people came to the convention.
Whoa.
So
Wow.
like that some over 1,000 people came to the convention, and I sold out of my books. I sold out of my hardcover books. I brought eight
That's
and I sold them
amazing.
all. And I
That's
was really
crazy.
surprised. Yeah, and I didn't sell out at TCAF. That was that was really
Interesting.
hard for me to sell at TCAF, but I was just like so impressed. And I think a big part of it was a very kid-friendly show.
Mm.
Um, but that was a really nice surprise. And it was really cool to be in Juneau and to like engage with that community and meet
Now,
everybody.
I'm wondering, is there a way for comic artists to get on? You remember scholastic book fairs that they used to have
Yeah.
as at schools? Like, I wish that there was a way for comic artists to just show up at those and table
Ah,
next to all the other
ah.
books, and like it's
Yeah,
just little kids like taking their lunch money or whatever and buying your zines. How can we set this up?
that's a good idea.
I think Scholastic is tricky because it's like that they worked with the school, like that's part of like their business plan, right? They because they kind of set that up all themselves. You can't really have anybody not Scholastic kind of come into one of those, but it's definitely, I mean, that's definitely something to
I
like. I don't
mean,
know.
yeah, and I mostly say that as a joke, but like that was like the first like table. It's not tabled, but it's like you go and there's books on tables and you're a kid. That was like the first time that I had seen that done. It's funny that they never like pair up with any like artists or authors or whatever.
It's
Yeah.
competitive. We just, oh, that's funny that we bring that up because I was just talking to a friend of mine about this. Have you noticed any kind of like, Reddit, like any kind of like, type of like profile or like kind of vibe between like like the difference between comic artists and animation people,
Hmm.
because they're like two very different worlds. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of crossover, especially
mhm,
in LA. Um, Definitely. I think comics and animation, I think I when I was really new to animation, it felt like they were very distinct, and now I'm like, oh, it's all the same. We're all just drawing. But there is a difference. I think like I talk to a lot of friends who also work in animation, and a problem I have that I'm noticing a lot of us have is kind of this fear of making a bad drawing. And
mhm,
so it makes it hard to draw when we're not at work, because when you're at work, it has to be a certain quality because you're in a pipeline and on a deadline.
mhm,
But when you're making a zine, you can draw whatever you want. And so, like, having that freedom and finding that freedom can be kind of hard to go
Hmm.
back to, I
that's
noticed.
so
And
true.
I have like tricks and tips I've kind of figured out to get me to loosen up, but it was I had to I didn't figure that out for a long time. I was like I wasn't drawing for 2 years, and I was like, what is going on? And it was just because I was scared. It's because it's scary to make a bad drawing.
Hmm.
What are your tips and tricks?
The thing that I find that works the best for me is to just turn on a TV show that I've already watched and just draw all their faces. And sometimes pause and sometimes don't, and just kind of treat it like figure drawing and just draw with a pen with no pencil. And so that way I have to make bad drawings because I'm not good at drawing faces. Like I'm not good at caricature or anything. So it's like kind of an exercise in like fucking up,
Hmm.
and drawing directly with pen. Um, I got really into Dragon Ball Z For the first time, I had never watched or read it, and a few years ago, my partner got me into it, and then I was suddenly drawing fan art of like these muscle men, and I had never drawn muscle men before, so I had to make bad drawings. And
That's
so that felt like I was tricking myself into drawing.
I feel like I'm surprised there isn't more women drawing Dragon Ball Yaoi.
Oh, there is. Oh my God, I could send you a list.
Okay, you have to.
Yeah, because that's like that's what I was so happy to discover.
Yeah. I've just seen one of my friends and I see her drawing style and I'm like, I know what you're up to that you're not showing everybody. But I was like, where is it?
Yeah. Oh, I went to Japan like last year, and the thing I spent the most money on, we went to like all the doujin shops, and I got a ton of Dragon Ball doujins.
That's
And
awesome.
I was just like sneaking them through customs, like, oh yeah, I bought some books. Please don't look at these books.
That's
So
hilarious.
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
that's
feel
how
like
I trick myself.
there'd probably be more Dragon Ball Z yaoi if those guys weren't just punching each other all the time and that's it. Like I feel like if there was more like if they did some like sweet stuff every once in a while, or like there were more filler episodes, maybe.
Yeah, but I think that's the whole thing though. It's like you don't want them to actually do the thing in the show or else you don't have anything to write about. Like right?
Yeah. It has to like come from, I feel like a lot of it comes from the imagination,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and like you sort of fill in the blanks because like yeah, Vegeta, he doesn't really say much in the show,
Yeah.
you know. So you gotta make it up.
Yeah. It's funny how he's such a fan favorite, and it's true he doesn't have that much runtime, but
Yeah.
he's got such a specific personality that people really latch onto him.
Hmm.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I feel like also in later years he got like cooler rather than like outwardly vindictive and like yelly and like mean. Like later he became just kind of like a brooding, sulking guy that's in the corner like with his arms crossed, like judging people.
That's true.
And I feel like there's a lot there to work with. Strong silent
Oh
type kind
yeah.
of style.
Oh yeah. And he also, out of all the characters, he's like the only one who's actually a good father and husband. I
It's
love
true.
Goku, but he's not a
He's
good
not.
dad.
He's not a good dad.
And he's not. Yeah, he's not. Because he's still a child. He's always going to be a
Yeah.
child, and it's
Yeah.
fine,
That's his hero's flaw,
I
his
guess.
fatal flaw.
I mean, I think the best example of that is that like him giving the like magic beans like to Cell. Like I destroyed me. I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, I was like, I never understood this. I never like that was so crazy. Craziest Dragon Ball moment. So you like to draw with a pen, something that like you're familiar with? Any other tricks, or is that the main thing that you do to get back into the groove?
That's the main thing, is really just like drawing with a pen and kind of forcing myself to keep my hand moving as much as I can and
Mm.
to actually fill out a sketchbook. Because the first time I did that, I was like, oh, this is actually so good to do. And it's just a lot of drawing.
See, it's an interesting perspective that you're giving on like comic artists versus um like people in animation, because most of my experience with people in animation has been storyboard artists, and the whole thing with storyboard artists is we never finish a drawing. Like it's always our
Yes.
whole life lives in the sketch phase, and then there's a hard time going from, for some people, like doing finished art like outside of that. But the positive is we're less I've found that we're less embarrassed of a sketchy drawing. Like it's like the drawings, my drawings don't have to feel perfect all the time because I've handed in sketchy 300 sketchy drawings on a show that was scary. And they were like, okay.
Yeah. That was a really fun thing to learn when I first started learning about storyboarding, was just like what the difference is like how to make a drawing that's clear
Hmm.
but not finished. And that makes a lot of sense because I feel like a lot of people I know are like, "Oh man, my sketch looks great, but when I ink it, it looks different. It doesn't look as good."
Mm.
And sometimes I feel like the first drawing I make is the best drawing.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but sometimes it's like, "Oh, that was just what my hand was feeling."
Well,
Mm.
also that's the one where you're trying to get it done fast to get your idea out, so there's like energy and looseness in it, probably. No, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So you've worked in animation in several different departments. What was it like going from one department to the next? Um, yeah.
Yeah, well, so I was a revisionist on the Fungies for a couple years, and yeah, I really loved doing that. I really love being a revisionist, honestly. Like it's I love kind of poring over all the episodes, and it feels really kind of nice to spend so much time with it. But and then my next job after that, I was a background designer on Tuca and Bertie, and that I Lisa Hanawalt, amazing artist. That was her show, and I I think I'm not really sure why they picked me, to be honest. But I think they just knew of my work, maybe through Instagram,
Well,
maybe
also
not. But
Lisa it often tables at conventions. I
yeah,
saw her at Kella last year.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
So
I used to like one time I went up to her table at like TCAF 2015 and I was like so nervous and I had her sign my book and I was like, oh my God, Lisa Hanawalt, she's so cool. And now she's my coworker.
Woo!
that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
Oh no,
But you were talking about how they picked you for Toucan Birdie, like
yeah.
and you
Um,
were on Toucan Birdie, you were character designs or backgrounds.
I was a background designer and I did some paint too. And so it was really different because I mean a show like Tuca and Birdie, the lines have to be kind of loose. And so a lot of the notes I was getting was to loosen up
Oh,
and things like
interesting.
that.
Mhm.
But it also does have to conform to a certain style. Like a room has to look like a room, you know, a table has to function like a table. And so it was very different from revisions. And it was also really interesting to see that part of the process because I didn't know really like how these two fit together. I didn't realize like, oh, this is why we have to draw the boards on this like it has to make sense this way because then they're going to draw the background this way, you know, so a lot of it suddenly made a lot of sense.
What did you like better, boards or backgrounds?
I think I like backgrounds more just because it's really exciting to see on screen like a finished image that I drew.
Yeah.
It's really different than
Mhm.
seeing like it's a similar to seeing a board, but it's different. It's like, oh, I remember this,
You
and
actually did that
this is
line.
the thing I turned in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do love I love them both. I like the freedom of boards too.
Nicholas the guy on Newgrounds asked, "What is the best part of being an artist?"
Oh, wow. I think the best part of being an artist is that you have this superpower that you can
Fly.
you
No,
can
I'm just
fly
no.
and you're really strong. And just bringing
No.
something into the world that wasn't there before, I
Yeah.
think is really special. I think that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately in the time of AI, you know? Like
Yes.
I like try to choose not to be scared of AI because of XYZ, you know, like just trying to really appreciate like what it means to really be an artist, you know, and it is magical.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot too. I think I've been kind of thinking a lot about like how artists dealt with the arrival of like photography. And I think maybe I'm a hopeless optimist or whatever it is, but I think there's always going to be a need for artists because well, right now what I say is that like from the way I understand AI to work, which is a very basic understanding, right? I'm not a coder or anything, but from what I've understood, it tends to give the most mediocre is not the right word, but like the most like expected type of answer. The
The
answer.
Funko Pop.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. AI will give you your Funko Pop and your and as an artist, I think like if you think about your work and you actually, you know, are a little bit more refined and creative, you can avoid that
Yeah.
pitfall.
And if you want to say like, okay, video killed radio, I'll tell you what, sometimes I still listen to the radio when I can't get my Bluetooth to connect in my car. And
That's so real.
and, and yeah, there's a lot of static. Yeah, I can't find a station with anything I like on it, and usually it's just me doing the auto search for the whole time I'm driving. But sometimes I put it on, and that's what animation's going to be like in 50 years. No, I'm kidding. Listen, people are always gonna like it. We've talked about AI a billion times. People know how we feel. It'll be all right.
I forgot.
What, that we talked about AI? No, I mean like just not to get into like a super long AI talk, but in general, I think that you and I on this podcast take a more optimistic like, listen, the computers can't actually do what we do. We're gonna be okay. It does a pale imitation of what we do. They can't do what we do without us. Like, and also
That's true.
The people that are the true fans of cartoons are not, they're still going to want human made cartoons at the end of the day. Already I think people are getting tired of like kind of the AI slop, dude. And I think that there's going to be kind of like a fad burnout of like, people can tell if something's AI and they'll be like, so that's my take, and that's, I feel like in general, I don't like to perpetuate like a whole bunch of fear about it on this. This is we're a pretty optimistic podcast, so.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm also in that camp.
I agree. I don't also I don't know. I don't feel threatened by it, and I think we're gonna keep doing our thing.
I also think legislation still has to catch up to what some of it's doing. So I think things might be a little different in a couple years when the first big problems start going to courts. That's also another feeling I have.
I also, just one controversial thing. Have you guys seen these like meme AI cat videos where they're like high drama, and it's like it's like these cats that are like, his wife left him for another more handsome cat, and now he has his son and he's by himself and crying.
This is not on my feed.
But then like his house catches on fire and the dad dies and the son cat is by himself crying, but he finds a girlfriend. And like,
wait, these are AI videos of cats?
Yes, they're like so batshit crazy that I'm like, I can't. And it's the meme song that goes like that's very sad. It's like da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. So they do that, but with cats meowing. It's such a fever dream. And these are, listen, controversial take. These are the only AI videos I'm okay with. But it destroys the world, so I don't want to destroy the world just to see cats melodrama, but that's where I don't want to draw this. That's my
an interesting AI related thing that happened recently is I had someone reach out who was like, when I was younger, I fell in love with cartoons because of you, and now I'm a full-time AI artist, and I want you to. I was wondering if you could check out my portfolio, and I was like, man,
damn,
this is not. What I'm gonna say is not gonna feel good for either of us.
That is rough.
Yeah.
How did you handle it? Sorry, is that okay?
No. We could talk about it. I mean, I said I'm glad that you're having fun with what you're doing. Like my point of view, regardless, is like the images that you're doing look cool. But I mostly just said like I will always be around to help you or help people that want to learn how to draw, but AI isn't my thing, and I don't think that there's a bridge that can connect us there. But if you ever need any help with drawing, I hope that you continue drawing alongside of this, and I could help you in that regard. So that was sort of my response.
That's very nice of you.
Because like I mean, like I know there's gonna be people, especially young people, that are like, you know, they're trying to adjust with the times. They see that people are doing it. Maybe they have fun doing it with their friends. They're like, oh look, I made like an AI music thing, and then I made a video, and now I can send it, and it's funny. But they did say like, my dream is to work at like Nickelodeon or Disney or Cartoon Network. And the other thing I did say, if you're looking to work at one of those studios, like even if those studios in the future implement some sort of AI technology tool, they're going to want an artist that can use that. And so I recommend, if that's the pathway you want to go, to make human art alongside of it.
That's a great answer.
That's hard. It's a weird situation because it's human, and I don't think that there's malice in the person, and they approached me in a very nice way. But yeah, dude, I mean, that's a real thing. Those kind of situations are already popping up where there's people that like their whole art existence online, their whole artistic, quote unquote, artistic identity is wrapped up with AI stuff, and they call themselves AI artists. And I'm like, how do I handle this? You know?
Yeah, that's crazy. I feel like, I haven't really had that conversation, I guess. So that's why I'm always interested to hear like how to handle it. Let's I want to kind of keep moving because we have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure that I hit all of them.
Do it.
Leicester on Newgrounds asks, what is your approach to designing good backgrounds?
Oh. Well, every show is different, so a lot of it depends on the style of the show. But in general, I think it's a good idea to try to break up the space with different shapes. Try to think about what looks interesting, and try to like ask yourself, where do I want the viewer to look, so that way you have a direction to go in. But yeah, that's the basics of it. Try to fill the space as much as you can.
Great tips.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because I never really think about these things, as board artists like Sean and I, we do mostly boards, so it's always good to hear kind of like what's the process on the other side.
Yeah.
On Blue Sky, we have Knackbags asking, what are your favorite things to draw in a project? Similarly, what are the go-to things you draw in your sketchbook when you're just kind of drawing your draw? And will you demonstrate these for us?
So I like to draw things that are fluffy, things with like curly hair. Mayor Good Boy is all curls. Like he's just a really big fluffy dog. Um, this is just like kind of the shapes that my pen automatically goes to. And sometimes I find like I draw like animal children, like little cats, Richard Scary type stuff. That's usually like what like my first instinct is to draw.
Yeah, Richard Scary
Is
ruled.
and critter, yeah.
I love it. I
And
used
just
to
like
love it.
critters. Oh, he's so good, and like kids still react to Richard Scary. Like it's like such a timeless, such a great style. I love it. But
It's so
yeah, and
charming. Yeah.
dinosaurs too. Dinosaurs. I like to draw dinosaurs.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur? This is so funny because it's a question that I get asked way more than I ever thought I would get
Really?
asked in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I,
like Triceratops. There's not a real reason for that except when I was a little kid, I for some reason thought that all Triceratopses were girls and they were all named Katie.
is it because of the
Land
land
Before
No,
Time?
that
What is
no,
that?
because that she's named Sarah in
Yeah,
that.
what?
But I don't know where I got this name, but
Katie.
I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, and I loved the Triceratops, and I just thought her name was Katie, and I was like obsessed with her.
so funny.
Every time I'm in the American Museum of Natural History, I always got to go visit the dinosaurs.
Always got to visit Katie.
Yeah.
Visit Katie.
That's hilarious.
That's so cute. I feel like when I was like a kid, I had we had like a series of books that were like kind of covering different like science topics, and one of them was about dinosaurs, and it would kind of cover a lot of like the different types. And when I was a kid, man, I must have been so annoying. I was always trying to be like different from the other kids. I was like, Triceratops, like too popular. Like I was like that
Their
kind
names
of
are
kid.
Sarah. Too popular.
Yeah. And so I would always pick like the weird little like dinosaur nobody's ever like heard of. And now when people are like asking me, yeah, you have a favorite dinosaur? I'm like, I remember there was one when I was a child, but it was so specific and never talked about that I don't remember.
I feel like my favorite recently has been the one that's in that meme that's act dumb, get the thumb, and it's
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's like the thumb spike dinosaur, and it's like on the
Yes.
guy's neck or whatever.
I feel like I had that book when I was a kid. I had the book that illustration was in. And I remember he's like stabbing the other dinosaur in the neck with his thumb.
That's
It's
crazy.
scary.
Yeah, what was that? Talk dumb, get the thumb, dude. That dinosaur is so funny. I gotta. What's that dinosaur's name?
I feel like I've seen a meme with it where it's like something something me when I'm
Me
fucking
when I
coming
get
to
you.
get you.
Me when I
Yeah.
get you.
Me when I get you. So threatening.
Dinosaur with the spike thumb.
Oh my god, I found it. I found it.
Iguanodon?
I'm
Is
like,
that the iguanodon?
It might be.
Wait, wasn't that the dinosaur where originally they thought it was a spike on its
Yes.
head or like a tooth, but they realized that it was thumbs? Dude, I love
Oh my
act
God.
dumb, talk dumb, get the thumb, dude. That's my
That's
favorite.
so
It's one of my
funny.
favorite memes.
That's so fun.
I think the best part about this picture is that he looks there's no emotion.
No, he's like
It's just
looking
like straight up. Yeah.
like dead-eyed. Just
Yeah. Wow, that's art. AI could never do this. Not to go back into that. Let's see. Milkman is here. Are there any demographics you feel are underrepresented in media as a whole? Interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think so. I don't feel like I'm the best person to really talk on that, but absolutely. I think it's still like there are plenty of underrepresented groups in animation and comics, you know.
Mm,
Like I think there was like a graphic going around like most of the books, like kids' books, are still about white kids. And
mhm,
then there's like a certain number percentage, and a certain percentage of them are about animals. And then after that, it's kids of color. And so it's yeah, there's still a long, long way to go in that regard.
mhm.
yeah, I got my first misinformation from children's books. Like
Oh,
I
really?
remember my grandma reading me a children's book that it was like Tiki Tiki Tembo no So Rembo Umaguchi Gama Gamaguchi, and it was a story that a white woman wrote about the reason why Chinese names are short, and it's the story about a kid with a Chinese name who's really long, and he gets stuck in a well, and his brother can't say his full name to tell his mom that he needs to be rescued, and that's why all Chinese people's names are short after that, so that if they fall down a well, they can say this, this person fell down a well easily.
That's That's
Wow.
crazy.
So,
Yeah.
so that's nuts. But I remember getting read like that as a children's book. Like
Oh yeah.
so yeah. I mean, I feel like it's that's definitely gonna be a thing, and that's like when kids are the most impressionable. So it's important to have representation and the right people telling stories about the right things. And
Definitely. I think there it is changing, thankfully. Like there are more and more. It's just yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I think also I was reading a take on like kind of comics, books, like kind of that world, that because as we were talking about, we didn't go into a ton of details about the finances of like working in comics, but you did bring up that animation pays better and that you used to have a job on top of doing, at least during the zine era.
Hmm.
um so where I was getting at is that like because it's so financially rough to do books as a whole, it will favor a um like class of people who are like more well off, that have more like support, financial support from their family, their partner, blah 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 blah. And just because of the way that industry is
sure,
structured.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
there's definitely something to just some thoughts
Yeah.
for listeners.
It's same way with like unpaid internships. Like
hmm
who can
Yeah,
take an unpaid internship? Not very
exactly.
many people can do that, you know.
for sure.
Yeah, because then like yeah, it's like you still gotta, you still have like expenses, that. We do have two questions from Instagram. Andy Young Film. What are some of your favorite comics and graphic novels?
Okay, yeah. Um, well, recently I just reread Steve Wolfhard's Cat Rackham book. I
Oh,
don't know if you
Steve is
guys are
good.
familiar with that. But there are these comics he made a long time ago, and they're so charming, and I feel like they were so influential to me, and I just reread them, and I'm like, oh, these are genius. Um, Similar, like one of the books I reread a lot is Casey Green's Anime Club.
Did you see the news?
I saw, and I made a sound. I was so excited. Um, but that's like always been one of my favorite comics, and I reread it. Iggy Craig,
Oh
one of my
yeah,
favorite artists, their book, Sad Girl Space Lizard, I
that
think
one's
is one
good.
of the best comics ever made. I know that that's a hyperbole, but I really think that. And I was at a comics reading. My friend Christine Losantos, another incredible artist, she just made this book. She self-published this book, Legendary's Goodbye Son, and she read it at the reading, and it was so moving. And I am such a fan of her work. There's a lot of really great comics out there,
Hmm.
and I could keep going and going, but those are just kind of the ones off the top of my head.
I like that these are all like very indie. They're all kind of like self-published too, right?
Most of them, yeah.
Because yeah, and I guess I'll put like, I mean, Piao isn't technically self-publishing. I'm thinking about the Sad Girl Space Lizard. That was with Piao, right?
I think actually the first edition was self-published.
Oh,
I
interesting.
I
And then we
could be
got,
wrong about that, but
hmm
I think and then it was Piao.
yeah, that one's really cool. But it's cool that those are like all like small comics that you mentioned. Lucy Ebre asks, when it comes to your comics and graphic novels, what does an average workday look like for you? I'm a schedule freak and I'm nosy.
Well, actually, like, so it depends on how far away I am from the deadline and if I'm working another job and kind of what it feels like every day is a little bit different. I'm pretty bad at sticking to a routine. But typically when I'm working on a book, and that's the only thing I'm doing at the time, I just try to treat it like a 9 to 5 work day. I take a lunch break. I stop working after a certain time. You know, I try to keep it as normal as possible.
You're
I try not to get distracted, but that's hard too.
Yeah, I was gonna
It
say,
is
like,
hard.
this is so inspirational because that is, I am not able to do that. Like, that's what every morning, that's what I set out to do. Every day, I fail. I mean, I still get the work done. It's just, it doesn't
Mhm.
sound as like, like,
Yeah.
I don't take the
Well,
break.
there are some days where it just doesn't happen, and I've kind of learned I can't bully myself into making like after a certain point, it's just like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna call it. This day is over. It's okay, because feeling shame about it is only gonna make it worse, just get some sleep, go back in the next day. That's kind of how I try to treat it.
Yeah, that's really healthy. Yeah, that's funny. I think, yeah, especially for comics, I think because you have so much time, like how much time do they usually give you to get a book done, publishers?
Well, it depends. So for Mayor Good Boy, for the first book, the first contract I signed wanted me to have it done in 5 months,
Oh, that's short.
and
Ooh,
that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Um,
damn.
you
That's
know,
I can't
some
believe it. I
some people can do that. Godspeed. God
So
bless
how far
them.
did you get? Like, what percentage were you done by that point when you, and how
Yeah.
close to that point did you need to tell them that like that's not feasible? I need an extension.
I learned pretty fast, I think, because I was also working in animation at the time, and I was working on the Fungies, and I was trying to do another book also. And
My
so
goodness.
like a few months in, my hand was hurting and my eyes were hurting, and I was just like, listen, you guys, I'm sorry. I'm not like I have to I can't quit my day job. I have to have more time. And they were very like respectful of
Oh,
that.
that's
Like
good.
they thankfully like they let me go. Sometimes some books it takes a really long time, and sometimes like the schedule it just gets extended and extended. I've never been in a situation where a publisher has been like, you got to get this done now or else.
Mm,
That's
I've
nice.
luckily never been in that situation. I know it can feel that way sometimes, but especially compared to animation, I think it's like it's just nothing's worth dying over
mm,
is kind of the position I've landed on. I'm just not super fast anymore. I try to do it really fast and it hurt. So, I think for a 200-page book, I think typically like a year to a year and a half
yeah.
is standard. I do 32-page books sometimes, and those it's like half a year usually to a year.
So are
Um,
sizes of these books, is it usually like, are there like standard lengths, or is it like, are there different categories of lengths that like you estimate, or
yeah, so for the 32-page books, those are for early readers, and I think that's a standard length for that. Those are for kids ages 4 to 8. 200-page books for middle grade, I think is pretty standard, but it goes up to like 250. Sometimes people make 300
mm-hmm.
page
Hmm.
books, etc. I think it really just has to be, you just like work out with your publisher what it's going to be, and then it has to be in I believe just like in terms of groups of 4 pages because that's how things are printed and
Hmm.
but yeah, it varies. And then I think like with indie publishers you can do like 100-page books or 60-page books. I've seen things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gotten paid out on royalties for books? Or like,
No, I have not.
mm,
Yeah, and I feel like eventually I hope Mere Good Boy sells out eventually, but yeah, so far I have not.
So is
yeah.
it typical that you'd have an initial payment up front, but in the deal there'd be some sort of like once they recoup the cost of printing the book, you get a certain percentage of book sales? Is that what you mean by royalties?
Yeah, I think it's like 10% sometimes, and a certain percent goes to your agent
Oh, cool.
too, I believe. It depends on the contract. But yeah, so what happens is as soon as they sell enough copies of the book to hit your advance that you get, then you start earning out royalties. And so
Hmm.
you get an advance before you start the book. And sometimes it's like you get half up front, half when you turn it in, or a third up front, a third when you turn it in, and a third when it gets published. Things like that. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
broken up.
Yeah, and actually, we were talking a little bit about like book business before we started recording, but because the way that the money is broken down in the book is that you have to pay a lot of different people. You have to not only pay the printer for printing the book and the physical, like making the physical copy, but then there's like the distributors, and then the publishers also pay themselves with it, and then there's a little bit that has to go to the retailer as well. So the shop that's selling the book is also taking a cut. And then whatever is left goes to the author.
Hmm.
So for people listening who are not too familiar with how book, like kind of like the book economy, um, y- the price of a book will be adjusted in order for everybody in that chain to get enough money. And a lot of the time, the author is actually the one who gets the least amount of money out of everybody. Usually, the price of printing the book is kind of high. And then I think from what I remember, this is so don't quote me on this, but like I remember seeing a graph that retailers do take a pretty big chunk, especially retailers like Barnes and Nobles and Amazon. And so it turns out that like usually the author will get paid like maybe $1 or less per copy sold, which is an interesting thing to think about on like a book that's like, I don't know, like how much are the books? Like $20, would you say? 20, 25?
Mayor Good Boy books are 10 to
$10 to
$15.
$15.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are like cheap
Yeah.
books. Um
Yeah. Yeah, like the newest one I think is more expensive. But yeah, the early ones are 9.99.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of margin for
Yeah.
everybody in a $9 tag. And I think for people who like do convention, it becomes like way more apparent because we price our books ourselves, and we all that we have to think about is like, okay, I'm going to print my book. So all of the only money you're really spending is like the price of the table, which could be kind of quote unquote like your distributor, I guess, or whatever, and then the price that you pay for printing it. But then you as an artist, you get to pocket most of the money, whereas like when it's like a traditional publishing. And I don't know if you've ever sold $1 items on your table, Miranda.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like every time that I count the money that I make after a tabling event, I'm like, why am I selling things for $1? Like,
Well,
like
so what I sell, I make like a little one-page mini zine. I like fold like out of one sheet of paper, I fold it and make a zine out of that, and those I sell for $1 or trade. So it's
yeah.
like it's just there on the table, you
But
know.
what I mean is like if you're doing okay, let's think about the fact like let's think about okay, what if you have to pay $300 to get a table at like a Comic Con or whatever,
Oh yeah.
and all you have are $1 zines. You have to sell
Oh
300 of
yeah.
them. That's
Three
crazy.
hundred dollars is a lot of money for a table. I mean, I've never done like Emerald City or New York Comic
Hmm.
Con or any bigger ones like that.
I think
Usually
Designer Con is
smaller.
600 a table.
Oh
Oh
And
my
then
no.
God.
and then you share, like if you split the table it's 300 and 300. Like I think it's 600 for like a little section or whatever, and then you
Oh
can
my
split
God.
it. But yeah, there are table spots that cost too much, I think,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
like San Diego. I think it's like thousands of dollars for a
Yeah,
table, I
dude.
heard.
I think that's the reason why I'm like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to
God,
do San Diego Comic Con."
I wish, like honestly, if I had a time machine and I already did all this stuff I had to do, I would want to go to San Diego Comic Con in like the 80s. I just
Yeah.
want to know what it was like when it was fun. I feel like everyone I've ever talked to was there was like, oh yeah, it used to be fun. Now it's just really stressful.
Yeah, because it's so big. And dude, the artist alley, when I went to the artist, I don't know, it made me a little bit sad because the tables are tiny. Like they're so
You know
small.
what's
And I'm like,
frustrating about cons a little bit? I feel like so much of the space goes to large kind of like large like sort of toy companies that aren't
uh-huh.
comics, or like big sort of like fan art tables that don't do
Yeah.
comics. And it'll be like, and they'll have these huge extravagant booths and sell a lot of like Pokemon merch or whatever. And then you have these comic artists that end up getting kind of like bad, like for instance at TwitchCon, a lot of people's main gripe is like half of the vendors don't stream on Twitch. They just are convention artists that are like fan art artists that like they don't even stream, but they get table space.
Interesting. You know, it's really interesting that you point that out because I had a little bit of that gripe as well when I went to Emerald City Comic Con because it's like I'm on my soapbox now. Because the event really made clear in the rules it has to be comics focused, comics, comics, comics. It has to be the focus of your table. So I went in mind with that and I'm like, I'll just grab my books with me. And then I look around and everybody has prints. Like it was mostly prints. Maybe they
No.
had one comic, maybe two. But then I was like,
Yeah.
fuck, because people, as I was talking to some friends who table a lot, they do say prints is like the moneymaker. And it's like, and then I was like, fuck, well then I couldn't um make I mean, I did make enough money that I broke even or whatever, but then I was just like, I felt like robbed because
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's like there was a time when like pins, like enamel pins were
Mhm.
like the big thing that everyone was making. Some people still do make those, but like I remember there was a time where that was just like the thing everybody made. I had one. And you could sell them for $10, and make a pretty good profit because people were buying those and things, and now it's like reso prints, and things like that, like t-shirts. But yeah, like I usually the indie cons, I think the typical rule is that like your table should be mostly comics.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I went to Anime Expo, and that's it's all great art, and you can't walk anywhere because it's so crowded.
That yeah,
But
dude.
yeah, it's mostly prints.
Yeah, because I mean it's easier to carry. You can sell
Mhm.
it for more expensive, and that's something that always kind of surprises me because I'm like, it's actually very interesting. I sell postcards for $5, and I have a zine, a couple of zines that I sell for $5 or less,
Mhm.
and I'm surprised that people will spend $20 on like five postcards that they like and not buy any books.
Yeah. I've
Mm,
noticed that too because I sell mini prints sometimes and stickers, and people will always go to stickers and those. And
yeah.
the mini prints sold, like when I went to TCAF, the mini prints sold really well. It was really hard for me to sell hardcover books there, even though
Yeah.
I wasn't really selling them for that much, especially at a certain point. I was like, I gotta get rid of these books. But it was still really hard to sell.
Yeah, people just I don't know, I don't know, they don't want to I don't know if it's that they don't want to read or they're afraid of the commitment that it's going to take to go through the scene.
They don't know how to
I
read.
know it's ah!
That must be it.
But I don't know, I think about this a lot because I don't know, I obviously I love comics. And I was thinking about like why is it that like having the final comics the book is a harder it's a harder step to take for people rather than if you publish your web comic or your comic or whatever on social media, people will read it because they're bored on the toilet, in the bus, or whatever, and that's when they
On the
want to
toilet
read the
in the
comic.
bus? What kind of buses are you riding?
On the bus
On the
toilet.
The
bus
bus toilet,
toilet.
Sean. You gotta.
I mean, a lot of buses smell like that, but I didn't realize there was a toilet I was missing.
You gotta go. You gotta go in the bus toilet, or else you haven't really lived life.
This is dope.
I think.
Now I can stop wearing my bus diaper.
But yeah, I think that people will read something that you put online, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I would rather somebody just read this, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's also kind of part of why at the end of shows I'm just giving zines away and
Mm-hmm.
trading them and stuff. I'm like, oh, I just want this to be read at a certain point. It's
Yeah.
easier to do that when selling zines and comics isn't your like full-time job.
Yeah.
I will say,
Right.
you know, it's a lot easier to do that when you have another source of income.
Yeah. Well, I also think like I don't know, and this is something that I feel I'm kind of hearing more and more. But like for the convention space, it's really about, even for people who are doing it full time, it's really like the prints is the moneymaker. Stickers sort of, but stickers are kind of cheap, so it's kind of hard to. Anyway, business.
Business.
Bi-
We're doing some real
Comics.
shop talk on this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, comics is a business.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about your creative block earlier when you're like kind of trying to move from one discipline to the other, like comics to animation. Do you ever feel blocked with writing?
Yeah, I do. Writing is usually the most mysterious part of it all for me. I can't just sit down and write a script usually. I always have to have some kind of thumbnailing to go along with it.
Hmm.
Um, but when I do feel blocked with writing, I kind of just try to take a breath and like I find something that really helps me is keeping a diary
Mm.
so that I can and just like to be kind of have a space that's private that where I can be honest about my feelings and experiences and just try to keep up with it. And then I
Mm.
have all these things that I can look through and usually from there can be a seed of a conversation or an emotion. Um, I took a class when I was at Cartoon Network. They had one of the classes they had for people who work there where a professional writer came in, and something I learned in that class was that there is the said, the unsaid, and the unsayable
Oh,
in
interesting.
every scene and I think about that all the time.
That's very cool. Wait, let me write it down.
Yeah.
Said, unsaid. What's an example? Okay, if you had this, I'm like, this is a pop quiz.
Ooh,
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah, you better not be
uh,
faking that you know this. We're gonna find out
right?
quick.
Would you be able to give us an example, a very simple example of of like a little tiny scene with said, unsaid, unsayable?
Yeah, gosh, that's a good question. I feel like when I'm watching TV, I do think about this a lot. Um, just it's hard for me to come up with a good example right off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, I just watched Hacks. You know, they have these emotions between the two main women. There's the things they said to each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's the things that you can tell they want to say to each other, but they can't. They're looking at each other. You can look at their just the way they look at each other. And then there's the things that you know that they're thinking that they can never say or feeling like Jean Smart's character, like Deborah, like she is old. She's in her 70s, and you know that she can't say that she's afraid of dying, you know.
I see.
That's that's also that's just like the a very an analysis off the cuff of the show Hacks. Not super well thought out, but that's kind of what I think of.
I love
When I
that.
enter any conversation or relationship, that's one of the first things that I just get off my chest. I'm scared of dying, and then and then all we have is the unsaid. That's a secret instead of having the unsayable too.
That would be so funny if every single people on Earth had the same unsayable. Like,
Yeah. We can't.
There's also, we share the same taboo, and there's just one. There's just the
Well,
one.
if
But
that's
we
the case,
can't ever
it's not
say it.
it's not the unsayable, it's the given. Like it's a given.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's the
Well, I guess we do have those. Like, we all are afraid of dying.
Yeah, but I feel like
Not to bring it down. Not to.
But I
Yeah.
feel like for me there's like other things that I'm more afraid of talking about.
Mhm.
You know, there's I'm not gonna say it because it's unsayable.
it's unsayable.
Oh, definitely.
But it's like
Definitely.
afraid of dying, I can say it.
Yeah,
Oh,
unsayable is actually like a pretty intense word.
yeah, that's why I was like wondering it. But
Yeah.
I think in the case of your example, it makes sense and it fits the show.
Mhm.
And so because she has a lot of pride, because she has a lot of she's a control freak also. So death is like the opposite of that. You can't control when you die.
Yeah.
So
And
very
it's
mhm.
like the end. She's afraid of the end.
Mhm.
Won't stop.
Yeah. Well, you know, talking about the and stopping. That's
No,
quite a
it's
showstopper right
it's
here.
unsayable. We can't ever end the
unsayable.
podcast.
We
It's
can't ever
unsayable.
we can't ever end the podcast. But that's the end of this creative block. Miranda, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Do you have anything that you want to shout out? Anything, any way that our audience can support you in your future endeavors?
Yeah, you can just go to my website, mirandaharmon.com, and that has all the information about my books, pre-orders. When the next one is up for pre-order, I'll have it up there. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. I'm Miranda M. Harmon there. And yeah, that's it.
Anyone you want to say, give a shout out to, say thank you to?
Like, in general?
It's like I've turned this into like an acceptance speech. Say thank you to one person.
Oh my God, I have to choose just one?
Yeah, now it's just one.
That's
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
your cat, your dog.
Oh my God.
Do you know one person? This is the real quiz. Does she know one person? This is the
Oh
quiz.
my God. Well, I guess I want to thank you to Eric, my fiance. He got me dinner he went to Fish King and got me dinner. I love Fish King. Anyone who's in Glendale, shout out to Fish King. Go to Fish King.
And while we're giving shout outs and thanks to our listeners, follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clements for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Ibuka for creating the short clips we've been putting out. And also thank you mommy. Thank you, Mom.
I love that. Like that was such a you came up with that on the spot. Like you've never done this before.
I was
Miranda,
just
so,
trying
like,
to create a
you were like,
segue into what I was going to say.
Yeah, I was thinking like, wait, do they ask people that in
no,
the show? Have I-
we're not-
I was
we're
like-
just trying to- If you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews and access to your Discord community. We also have a part of the episode that is just for patrons only because it helps us kind of keep the episodes shorter on YouTube to make it more digestible for the algorithm. We're trying really hard to grow this podcast. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.